Winner of the Pulitzer Prize. How how does that how did that affect anything that you did after that? And I know you weren't writing to get to that, I'm assuming, but I just wanted to know that right off the bat because it's a huge honor, and I just wanted to know how you felt about receiving that.
Well, I was delighted. I was surprised, That's a magical phrase in American culture, Pulitzer Prize. And whatever you do, I think if I invented, something marvelous, they would still say Pulitzer Prize winner as a way of, introducing me, or anybody else, who has the same prizes. It's a wonderful, strange aspect of American culture, that a prize like that means so much.
So your new novel, Jack, in the novel, you're kind of uncovering a character that's always been there that readers of the Giliad series have not really seen. How far in advance did you I'm assuming that your series was planned out, but you knew you'd be getting to this particular point because I saw some things where it said that you, it was a quote I read. It said, "I would lose Jack if I tried to get too close to him as a narrator." What made you be able to get close enough to him to write this next chapter?
Well, it's strange. I did not intend to write even a second Giliad book. I didn't plan out a series. I just kept feeling these characters in my mind that seemed substantial enough that they deserved their own books,
Mm-hmm.
And since I had, in a sense, blocked out their lives in Gilead, that I was writing within those constraints after the first novel. I was very interested in Jack. Part of what makes a character interesting, I think, to the writer is inaccessibility of a kind.
I did kind of look up some of your history in general, but you were born in what seemed to be a small town. Does that help influence how you write about Gilead and about the surrounding town and the intricacies that you put into it?
Very likely. I've spent so much of my childhood and youth in little towns that I gravitate toward them. I feel like, I'm a native creature in those little towns, and I'm used to I think that people that are more urban think that things have to happen at a sort of giant scale,
Mm-hmm.
and having a small town perspective, I know that very intense things happen at very small scales, and that's important to me.
A kind of continuing theme is kind of your desire to put into the books the kind of ideas and the thinking of John Calvin. Can you explain, what attracts you to his way of thinking?
Well,
it's a huge thing.
I know. Aside from characters living in my head, so do certain figures whose thinking has been important to me, So I don't intend so much to use Calvin as that I am so used to thinking in his terms that he emerges spontaneously, the same way that, like scriptural references do and so on.
Mm-hmm.
He's always associated with predestination, and people don't like that doctrine. But the fact is that if you read Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine or any of the major theologians, that is quite universally accepted as a true doctrine. Thomas Aquinas explains it in terms that would be very much like Calvin's, even uses the same proof texts and so on. So it has been used against Calvin polemically as if it were only his thought and the core of his thought, when in fact all these people who teach predestination as a valid doctrine are great moralists and great ethicists that always assume that everything that you do matters, So the sort of controlling they acknowledge this as an idea, but then they act as if they don't believe it. Basically, that's what most of the theologians do, which is fine. They would be completely paralyzed if they took it literally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a mistake. I think that, I mean, here I am taking on Western civilization, but like quantum physics completely complicates ideas like time and causality, which seem to make necessary the idea of predestination, of a sort of determinism. We know that time is not what we thought it was when they wrote, and so I think that if you understand quantum as something that can be looked at from a theological point of view, what it does is it creates the possibility that God acts freely relative to his creation in a continuous way. And then you can put aside worry about things like predestination and end up on a much more complex landscape, but that's an improvement.
I kind of dovetailing with that, I read a quote from the Archbishop of Canterbury, former, who said that he called you one of the world's most compelling English-speaking novelists, and said that your voice was needed. Your voice was needed in church and in society, especially in the UK. He was, he's Archbishop of Canterbury. Another big question that I'll ask is like, how do you feel about the role of faith in society? Because it's definitely central to your novels as well. How do you feel about that in general? And I don't mean worshiping like church, the separation of church and state, just faith in society in general, especially in these times that we're kind of in now.
Yes, I mean that is such a deep question. I don't, I think that many people are very private about what their religious beliefs are,
Mm-hmm.
and the people look at a landscape that is uninterpretable by them. Really, what do we know about what people think of in the middle of the night? And they impose the idea that everything is secular and religion has vanished and all this sort of thing. I think often we're so zealous for interpretation that we're not particular about what the quality of the evidence we're proceeding from,
I see.
I would really like, it was strange when I published Giliad, and many times subsequently, people have said to me, typically people who identified as Christian and religious, if I was not afraid to write things that were explicitly religious. And that puzzled me so much. Why should I be afraid? The idea that there's somebody out there that's going to shake his finger at you because you've, gotten a little theological from time to time, that's a phantom. It's an invented idea. No critic has ever taken me to task for that, ever. And I've been criticized in many places,
Uh-huh.
I think if people were less self-intimidated, less afraid of their own shadows, they could just, I'm not saying they evangelize or anything, but just be a little bit candid about how their thinking actually goes. And, it would be we don't talk to each other very well. I think it would be a great breakthrough, really.
My last question will be, is Jack the end of the Giliad series? Are you going to explore more characters, more things in there? Because he was kind of a mystery that was unwrapped. And you're going to continue though with this particular characterizations?
I don't know. I have not known at the end of every one of those novels if there would be a next one. I sort of sit around and daydream or read or whatever, and characters come into my mind, and they seem to do it so spontaneously without my intention, although they're always working for things that I've already established as true about them. And I have enjoyed writing these novels. I wouldn't be upset if there were a fifth one, but we'll just, I will have to wait and see.